My name is Thomas. I'm 91 years old, and if I could sit across from my 40-year-old self for just one quiet hour, this is what I would tell him. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't lecture. I would speak slowly, because at 40 you think you already understand time. You don't. At 40 you still believe you're in the middle of things, that there's plenty of room to adjust later. You think urgency belongs to youth and reflection belongs to old age. That belief will cost you more than you realize. You are tired at 40, but you don't admit it. You call it responsibility. You call it ambition. You tell yourself this is just a demanding season. Most of your life will be made of seasons you thought were temporary. At 40, you're proud of how much you can carry. You wear exhaustion like evidence of worth. I wish I could tell you that no one is keeping score the way you think they are. You spend too much time proving yourself to people who won't be there at the end. Bosses, colleagues, acquaintances who admire your output but not your presence. You confuse being respected with being loved. They are not the same. At 40, you believe providing is the same as being present. You think showing up financially covers the emotional absences. It doesn't. Your children won't remember how hard you worked. They'll remember whether you were reachable. You tell yourself they'll understand later. Later rarely comes in the way you imagine. I want you to know that the dinners you skip, the conversations you rush through, the evenings you spend distracted, those moments don't disappear. They accumulate, not loudly, quietly. At 40, you believe you are indispensable. At 91, I can tell you that you are replaceable. Everywhere except at home. And even there, the space you leave empty doesn't stay empty forever. It fills with distance. You are still married at 40. You think stability means safety. You don't notice how often your wife edits herself to keep things smooth. You mistake her quiet for contentment. You assume love doesn't need maintenance once it's established. Love thins without attention. I'm not saying you don't love her. You do. But love that is never examined becomes habit. Habit survives. Intimacy requires courage. At 40, you avoid difficult conversations because you don't want conflict after long days. You tell yourself peace is more important. Peace without honesty is fragile. I want you to understand this. Avoiding discomfort now only guarantees deeper discomfort later. You think you'll talk about things when work slows down. It won't. You think there will be a clear moment. There isn't. Life doesn't announce when it's safe to be honest. At 40, you still believe growth is about adding things. More income, more influence, more achievement. You don't realize that the second half of life is about subtraction, about letting go of what doesn't matter. I wish I could show you how little of what consumes your energy now will matter later. The emails, the meetings, the urgency, almost none of it follows you. What follows you are the moments you didn't give enough time to. The conversations you postponed, the apologies you rationalized away, the feelings you swallowed because you thought strength meant silence. You are not as self-aware as you think you are at 40. That's not an insult, it's normal. But you are stubborn in a way that masquerades as discipline. You ignore your body's warnings, the tight chest, the restless sleep, the irritability you blame on stress. Your body knows before your mind allows it. Listen sooner. I want to tell you that working harder will not quiet the unease you feel at night. It will distract you from it. Distraction is not resolution. At 40, you believe time is generous. At 91, I know it is precise. It gives you exactly as much as it intends to, and not a moment more. You don't need to become softer. You need to become more honest. You hide behind competence because it's safer than vulnerability. People praise your reliability. Very few know you. That will ache later. I wish I could tell you how freeing it is to stop performing competence and start admitting uncertainty. You don't need to have answers. You need to ask better questions. At 40, you avoid stillness. You fill silence with noise. Later, you will crave silence and regret how often you ran from it. You don't need another project. You need reflection. You don't need more discipline. You need permission to rest without guilt. Rest is not weakness. It's maintenance. Ignore that long enough and things break. At 40, you still believe being needed is the same as being valued. It isn't. Being needed keeps you busy. Being valued keeps you connected. When you stop being useful, many people will drift away. Don't be surprised. The ones who stay will be the ones you invested time in when you didn't have to. I want you to know that pride will cost you time you cannot recover. Pride in not asking for help. Pride in pushing through. Pride in believing you can handle everything alone. You can't, and you are never meant to. At 40, you tell yourself you'll slow down later. Later arrives wearing a body you don't recognize and circumstances you didn't choose. Slow down now, not dramatically, deliberately. Be harder to impress. Be easier to reach. I would tell you to call your friends more, not to network, to listen. Most of them will not be around forever. You think that's obvious. You don't act like it. I would tell you to say what you feel while people are still alive to hear it. Admiration, gratitude, regret. Silence doesn't preserve dignity. It preserves distance. At 91, distance is the heaviest thing I carry. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. That is the truth you are too busy to hear at 40. I wish I could tell you all of this and know you'd listen. You probably wouldn't. I wouldn't have. But maybe something would land, something small, and that might have changed more than you realize. There's more I would say to you, harder things, necessary things. If I'm honest, the hardest thing I would tell you at 40 is this. You don't get credit for intentions. You live as if meaning is measured by what you meant to do, what you planned to say, how much you intended to show up once things calm down. Life doesn't remember intentions. It remembers patterns. At 91, patterns are what stare back at you. You intended to be a present father, but presence is not occasional. It's repetitive. You intended to be a good husband, but goodness without curiosity turns into distance. You intended to take care of your health after this phase. Your body doesn't understand phases. It only understands neglect or care. I want you to know that being a good man is not about how much you endure. It's about how much you allow yourself to feel without numbing it. You numb yourself with work, with responsibility, with being the reliable one. Reliability becomes your hiding place. People praise you for it. That praise keeps you trapped longer than criticism ever could. At 40, you think this will solve everything. You think if you just tighten your grip, life will cooperate. Life doesn't respond to control. It responds to attention. You are attentive to tasks. You are inattentive to yourself. That imbalance will follow you. You avoid grief when it's small. You stay busy when sadness taps you on the shoulder. I promise you this, grief does not disappear when ignored. It accumulates. It waits until your body slows down, and then it arrives all at once. I carry grief now that could have been lighter if I'd allowed it earlier. Grief for friends I drifted from, for moments I rushed through, for versions of myself I never let speak. You don't cry much at 40. You pride yourself on that. Later, you will cry in quieter, lonelier places, and wish you had learned earlier that tears are not a failure of strength. They are a release of pressure. Pressure always finds a way out. I would tell you to stop measuring your worth by how indispensable you feel. Indispensable is a dangerous word. Jobs replace you. Organizations move on. Even families adapt. The only place you are irreplaceable is in moments that require you, not your function, your laugh, your patience, your attention. You give those away too cheaply to work and too sparingly to people. I would tell you to stop confusing motion with progress. You move constantly, but you don't always move forward. Some of your busyness is avoidance. You're avoiding questions you don't want to answer yet. Who are you when no one needs anything from you? What do you want when there's nothing to prove? Those questions terrify you at 40, so you drown them out. I wish you wouldn't, because unanswered questions don't disappear. They shape you from underneath. At 91, I see clearly how often I chose approval over alignment. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be seen as competent. I rarely asked whether the life I was building actually fit me. You assume fit is something you earn later. It's not. Fit is something you check constantly. I would tell you that love does not survive on loyalty alone. You believe staying is the highest virtue. Sometimes leaving, emotionally or physically, is the honest one. You stay quiet in arguments to keep peace. You don't realize you're teaching people how little truth you're willing to demand. Peace that requires silence is temporary. Resentment grows in that soil. I would tell you that your children don't need a perfect example. They need a human one. They don't need you to have answers. They need you to admit when you don't. They learn far more from how you handle uncertainty than from how you project confidence. At 40, you think authority comes from certainty. It doesn't. It comes from honesty. I would tell you to stop postponing joy. You treat joy like a reward for finishing everything else. Everything else never finishes. Joy that is delayed becomes brittle. Joy that is taken in small, ordinary doses sustains you. Some of the happiest moments of my life came late, not because they were bigger, but because I finally let myself feel them without guilt. I wish you would stop punishing yourself for resting. Rest is not laziness. It is maintenance for a long life. I didn't maintain myself well. I repaired myself instead. Repairs take more than maintenance ever would. I would tell you to listen to your body the first time it whispers. The aches, the fatigue, the short temper. Those are messages, not inconveniences. You override them with willpower. Willpower is finite. At 91, I live with the consequences of thinking I could outwork biology. You can't. I would tell you to be more deliberate with your friendships. You let many of them fade because there's no crisis demanding attention. You assume you'll reconnect easily. You won't. Friendship requires tending, not just history. Some of the loneliest moments of my life came not from being alone, but from realizing how many people I let slip away through neglect. I would tell you to speak gratitude out loud, not later, not when it feels less awkward, now. People leave without knowing the impact they had on you. That absence becomes regret. Say the things that would hurt to never have said. I would tell you that aging is not what you fear. It's not the loss of strength. It's the accumulation of clarity. Clarity is heavy when it arrives late. You still have time at 40 to make clarity lighter. At 91, I don't regret not being more successful. I regret being less honest than I could have been. Honest about my limits, honest about my needs, honest about what was quietly breaking me. I would tell you that masculinity is not proven by endurance. It's proven by self-respect. Self-respect looks like saying no earlier, like resting before collapse, like choosing presence over pride. I learned that too slowly. I would tell you that death is not the thing to fear. The thing to fear is arriving at the end, realizing you live most of your life on autopilot. I had moments of awakening. I wish there had been more. At 91, the past doesn't haunt me loudly. It hums. It hums with moments I rushed, with words I edited, with love I felt but didn't always express. I don't tell you this to shame you. I tell you because you still have leverage. You can still choose differently in small ways that compound over time. Be slower to commit, faster to listen, braver in ordinary conversations. Stop waiting for permission to live honestly. No one is coming to grant it. If I could end this conversation with you at 40, I would say this: your life will not be judged by how much you carried, but by how awake you were while carrying it. Be awake sooner. I'm 91 now. I see clearly. I just wish you could have borrowed my clarity before you paid so much for it. That's all I would tell you, and I would hope, quietly, that you'd listen.